If there's business to be stood on, Kenton, go ahead and tell me something about Wes Moore.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Happy Tuesday to all. Playing a little bit of catch up, but we're right back at it here on Tuesday. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, women's basketball played literally the game of the year. A double overtime victory over number one Notre Dame. We talked basically all week last week about the implications of this game and the national spotlight it puts on Wes Moore and this women's basketball program. To then go out and have College game day and then put B2A to the number one team in the nation, what more could you possibly ask for? Outstanding showing.
An NC State team that's expected to be good and meets expectations. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll drink to that. I will drink to that, okay? But in all seriousness, what a game and what a platform to have that game on, right? You're doing big stuff in the world when Magic Johnson starts tweeting the obvious.
I saw that.
That, my friends, is when you truly make the day that I hear, wow, Kenton's done such a great job of taking Meg Thee Stallion on a date from Magic Johnson's account, I'll be able to die a happy man. But until then, we're still here talking about NC State women's basketball. Let me tell you something. This game really was a game of the century type of game. It had every single thing that you could want. And really and truly, this was not only a Wes Moore masterclass, because the only thing you could question for Wes Moore was not fouling at the end of regulation. But it was also a Zoe Brooks masterclass like we have not seen.
Unreal.
Career high in points. How many of the things she had, Grace?
She had 33 of those things.
33 of them. Oh, my Lord. Let me tell you something. Zoe, welcome to the party at an extremely high clip. And by the way, Zoe Brooks has been balling all year. When I say welcome to the party, I mean she is knocking on the door of the NC State greats pantheon. And some people are going to say she's only a sophomore. It's too early. Look at the results.
Yeah.
Big part of a Final Four team last year. Pulls off the upset of number one in Reynolds this year with College game day there. I am telling you something. Career high against number one. Oh, yeah, they've got the best backcourt trio in the nation. Oh, yeah, you got Hidalgo, you got Miles, you got Citro. Oh, yeah, you can't stop them. Well, look at that. Just that easy. In the words of Sada Baby, as soon as they get started, better stop them. And that's exactly what our backcourt trio of Brooks, of Rivers, of James did. Because, I mean, Isaiah James is Isaiah James. She's always going to get hers in terms of scoring. But Sanaya Rivers and her passing was an absolute X factor in this game. And again, I cannot criticize these ladies in any meaningful way. The only thing that I would want to see get a little bit better, offensive rebounding. That hurt us down the stretch. Wes Moore fouling at the end of regulation. Don't let them get a three off. But other than that, this team was resilient. They kept fighting back. They kept battling back. And at the end of the day, somebody had to blink. Somebody had to hit the Roberto Duran no mas. And you saw it in that second overtime. It was a moment before Zah hit the behind the back around the world lay, where you could just tell Notre Dame was like, enough. We've had enough. Exactly. And you know what? NC State was gladly there to finish them off. What a game, man. What an amazing game.
It had literally everything you could possibly ask for. Offensive explosion, the drama. You had not one overtime, but two overtimes. You mentioned if there was only something you had to nitpick in this game, it was that we couldn't close it out in regulation. But to go into two overtime periods and withstand the best team, probably the most complete team, at least that I've seen this year in Notre Dame, Reynolds Coliseum was a spectacle. We already mentioned College game day, but to hear the crowd noise. I can only imagine what it felt like to be in the building. I wish I could have been there. It was unbelievable. And NC State, it's hard to say a team played a perfect game, so to speak, because, yeah, of course, there's things you can improve on. But all things considered, you out-rebounded the number one team in the country. You shot better, field goal percentage, than the number one team in the country. Better from three-point land, better at the foul line. You did everything you needed to do to conquer one of the best teams in the country. And it reaffirms to NC State fans, a lot of us knew this already, but it really showed the rest of the country, NC State can play with anyone. That includes South Carolina. That includes UConn. That includes Notre Dame. Anyone. They can line it up against anyone. And if they play their A game, which they did, they can beat anyone. This was a massive, massive win. I don't think it's hyperbole to say it's one of the bigger wins in program history. It's the third time they've beaten the number one team under Wes Moore. This one might have been bigger than the other two, with all things considered. The stakes, you did have College game day. Notre Dame, I mean, they are a machine this year, and NC State looked like our machine is better oiled.
Absolutely. Again, to me, the resilience down the stretch it speaks volumes because, again, there has to be something said for a team that just does not quit, a team that just keeps coming, a team that's like, hey, we don't give a damn what you got going on. We don't give a damn how hard you make this game on us. We are going to keep fighting and scrapping and clawing and battling, because that type of stuff is where you win these games in March. When the margins get thinner and thinner and thinner, that type of stuff is, hey, we've shown it and we will continue to show. This is who we are. And one very interesting thing about this game that I don't think enough people are really giving its proper due here. I talked about Zoe Brooks and the fact that she's a sophomore, Miss Do Everything. She can do a little bit of everything, and she showed it at a high clip in this game. Do you know who the second leading scorer in this game was?
I believe it was Tilda Trigger.
Isaiah James was second with 20, and Tilda Trigger was right
19.
behind her with 19. But that's what I mean in terms of you've got these pups out here balling. You've got young ladies that you know, hey, they have more eligibility. They will be back. And so when you look ahead, right, and you don't want to do this because obviously I'm enjoying this ride that we're on right now. Yep. And again, I have been fairly accurate with predictions about NC State in terms of their tournament hopes in the past. But when you look forward and say, hey, hopefully we win a natty this year, even if the ACC is not ours this year, even if the natty ain't ours this year, you are in some damn good hands. You've got a freshman going into a game against a team like Notre Dame where everybody gives their backcourt the love. That front court allows Notre Dame's backcourt to do what they do because none of them ask for the ball. None of them are drifting around the perimeter. Maddie Westbeld used to be a stretch forward. Now her big self is posted on the block like a mailbox. She is down there 24/7. Okay? Until the trigger said, oh, don't worry about it. When Sanaa Rivers hits me with that little pocket pass, when she hits me with that little dump off, I'll be there to finish. You're looking at Zoe Brooks saying, hey, you know what? If the team ain't got it right now, don't worry about it. I can do a backpack job. That is, again, you have that combination of guard play and seniority and the secret sauce that really throw it in there when your pups start coming along and playing extremely well. Oh, man, this team is special.
Yeah, that leads me into my point. We've seen the games where Isaiah James had to go Super Saiyan in order for NC State to win. You look at this game, you mentioned Zoe Brooks already, 33 points. She was perfect from the foul line, 14 of 14, 10 rebounds as well. A double-double for Zoe Brooks in this game. Talked about Tilda Trigger as well, 19 points, just missed a double-double. She had 9 rebounds. In a game where I wouldn't say Isaiah James had her best game. She still gave you 20 because she's that elite of a scorer. But even in the games where she doesn't have to completely take it over and win it for this team, you have players like Zoe Brooks can rise up to the occasion now. We didn't really know she was capable of 33 points against Notre Dame. But hey, if she could do that on Notre Dame, she could do that against anyone. I mean, let's be honest.
Absolutely.
You can run that out against anyone, and Zoe Brooks is rising to the occasion unbelievable. We saw the signs of her being an unbelievable player last year in her freshman year. To take it up a notch on a stage like this one, unreal. Shout out Zoe Brooks. That was the game. I thought it was one of the better games I've ever seen from an NC State women's basketball player in recent memory, outside of Isaiah James, of course. This team, they're a machine. And just when you get down on them a little bit, that tough loss over in Chapel Hill, you pick up 2 more ranked wins against Georgia Tech last week, Notre Dame on Sunday, college game. I cannot get over what a spectacle that was for NC State as a whole. That is such valuable exposure, not just for Wes Moore, not just for this program, but for the school as well. Like I mentioned last week, for everyone else getting to see Reynolds Coliseum, for those that don't really pay that close attention to NC State, maybe they don't even watch women's basketball that often, so they don't know about Reynolds Coliseum, it's magic. And you saw magic on Sunday, taking down the number 1 team in the country, the 3rd time that this program has done that under Wes Moore. Nothing but love. This team will continue to get better down the stretch, which is scary. You just beat the number 1 team in the country, and you're still getting better. That is a mark of a dangerous program.
Grayson, I don't think people realize how much better this team is getting. Remember how we felt in the middle of that winning streak when we saw after Wake Forest, you had number 10 Duke, number 22 Florida State.
I talked about that gauntlet.
UNC, number 20 Georgia Tech, and then number 1 Notre Dame to cap all that off. Remember when we were like, hey, if you just get a couple of those, if you get a couple, you're in good standing. You won all of them, and your one loss came by 1 point.
Right.
On the road to your most hated rival.
And you probably should have won that one.
Probably should have won it. But don't worry. We're going to see you again. We're going to do the do-si-do again. Where's the women? It's in Greensboro still, right?
Correct.
Okay. We'll see you again in Greensboro. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't get too attached. Don't get too attached to that win, Courtney. Don't get too attached. We're here. But this team, man, because again, coming into that stretch, what were we, number 15 or 16 in the nation? Everybody was holding on to early. Oh, man, you got blasted by South Carolina. Oh, man, you lost to a TCU team, which, by the way, Sedona got a weird case. Why is she around? But, you lost to that TCU team, and your front court looked like they were woefully underprepared for any of the smoke that any team with a good front court is bringing. You lose again against LSU. You get your doors blown off, and everybody's like, oh, you're terrible. Because, again, another team came in with bigs that you just were not prepared for. And now, all of a sudden, now out of the blue, who let them women from Raleigh get hot? Who let them get hot? Because, again, the bigs are now coming along. Tilda Trigger is coming along. Big Low coming along. The guards we knew were going to be the strength of this team. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But again, if the bigs in the front court could just do enough, if they could just hold court, you would be okay. And that's what happened in this game. Again, would I like to see them keep Notre Dame off the offensive boards better? Absolutely. Absolutely. But there will be times where you got to win ugly, where it's not going to be perfect, where you know what? Again, our front court is a weakness for a reason. This is objectively not as strong as our back court. But when it came to our post and having to secure rebounds, especially in that second overtime, they were Johnny on the spot every time. So, again, this squad, they don't quit. They don't give up. They don't roll over. They just keep battling, regardless of how well they play, regardless of if the shots are falling. And that's the hallmark of a championship team.
104-95 in double overtime over the number 1 Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I mean, that was basically a perfect game, perfect day for NC State. You take the time to celebrate one like that, but they do still have more work left to do. They have Wake Forest in Reynolds. It'll be senior night on Thursday evening. Got to continue to finish strong and then take that momentum into the ACC tournament. Outstanding win. Shout out Wes Moore. Shout out the women's basketball program. Couldn't be prouder for what we saw on Sunday. Coming up next, we're going to get into some NC State football news. Apparently, there will be no spring game coming up in April. More on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Our Tuesday sponsor is PrizePicks. March basketball is nearly here. There's no better way to get in on that action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you pick, more or less on at least 2 player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, it's easy, and it keeps every game more exciting. Me personally, I love how I can make my picks in less than 60 seconds and stay engaged all game long. When I win, my money hits my account in as little as 15 minutes, no more waiting around. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege, 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 for $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. Middle portion of our Tuesday show, now transitioning into some NC State football talk. On Tuesday, Coach Dorn had some media availability, came out and said there will be closed practices for all of spring ball. So all 15 of their practices, there will be no media involved, and they will not play a publicly attended spring football game. Now, Kenton, I've seen the last couple weeks here, that's becoming a trend, so to speak. I saw Nebraska came out and said at first that they were worried about other programs poaching their players, and so they would cut down on the eyes on their spring game. NC State, Coach Dorn basically said this is more about, having 2 new coordinators into the program. They don't want their stuff, so to speak, to get out there. So they're canning the spring football game, and everything will be done in-house. Kenton, what were your thoughts when you saw this news break on Tuesday?
With all due respect, if I hate to say this, but it has to be said. I understand the hiding your stuff angle. I get that. I fully get that and understand that. But Matt Rule in Nebraska and those boys set a terrible precedence, to which I'll say this. If a fellow team is thinking about poaching players from the current Nebraska roster, seek help. Call that lady. Get on that hotline, okay? But I will say, because things are becoming more professionalized, we can expect this to be what we see in the future. Everything being more professionalized means that everything will be more professionalized. Of course, you have like some one random open scrimmage for most NFL teams, or a couple open practices here and there, but by and large, especially during like OTAs, which spring ball is just not the optional part, you're not going to see a ton of like, oh, we get to see what they're going at and what they're doing in spring or in OTA. You don't get that in NFL, and I suspect within the next couple of years in college that won't be a thing either on this level.
Yeah, I knew when Nebraska came out and said that. I think now Texas and I think maybe USC has followed suit. I had a feeling that it would become a trend in college football, and I don't think NC State will be the last team by any means. You'll probably see an outpouring of other programs begin to do this as well. From the poaching players aspect, I've never really felt like the spring window is the time to do that anyway, because, there is the tampering aspect, but a lot of times it seems like tampering has gone on like in the middle of the actual season or very shortly thereafter. Like, for example, well, I don't know if Casey Concepcion's a great example, but he hit the portal the day after the regular season had ended, and perhaps he had some kind of idea of where he was looking, but I mean, that's not this. I don't think that the player poaching aspect is as big of a deal in the spring game, relation here, especially for NC State. I'm going to say this with all due respect. I don't think many teams are looking to poach players from NC State in the middle of April. Maybe a couple, but I don't think that would be a big enough reason for NC State to hide, their spring game. I do think it is a lot more focused on having 2 new coordinators, having to implement a lot more new things, possibly on offense. You're going to have to, kind of implement a hybrid system on the defense. That I get that. That makes more sense to me. I've kind of waffled a little bit back and forth on if I think it's a good thing or a bad thing. From the fan aspect, I understand why a lot of people are disappointed. This is, the only time outside of football season that you get to come in, see the team, you get to witness everyone, building excitement for the season in Carter Finley. Now that is no more. So I get why that's disappointing. I've always kind of thought, especially recently with the emergence of NIL, that the spring game should be used as an opportunity for fundraising, maybe marketing your team and using it that way, building your fan base, in their involvement in the NIL space, and taking this away here in this way. I think it might negate a little bit of that. I guess we'll see how it pans out over the course of the next month or so. But in terms of teams watching other teams to scout players, and I don't think that's that big of a deal here. To me, this reads a lot more as Coach Dorn doesn't want any outside noise. He wants to focus, have all of his players focus. And I think it might be a little bit of an elephant in the room. He knows what may or may not be at stake here if State does not have a good season in 2025. I think this is way more of a, we need to lock in, block everything out. All we need is us. All we got is us. And we're going to start right there.
I'm going to say something here in terms of what you just said that I think needs to be explored more in depth. There was a thing called the Fan Control Football League, but it didn't go anywhere because a 50-year-old Terrell Owens was dominating that league. So
I think Johnny Football was in there too.
Yes, he was. So here's what I mean by that. I think that you could absolutely, charge fans $5 or so and give them access to a server that allows them to call the play, in essence. To say, hey, you've always wanted to be a head coach. If you think you can do a better job of calling plays than the coordinator, let's go for it. You get to call the type of play, and we will execute that play to the best of our ability. Obviously, you're not going to put your full terminology on display. You're not going to be saying X-right jet laser. You're not going to be getting into the weeds of it, but you'll be saying, what do you want on this play, fans? Soft cover 3, blitz, cover 1 man. What do you want offensively? Outside zone to the right, short pass, long pass, all that type of stuff. And kind of see how that goes in terms of again, separating the fans into two different groups, the white group and the red group, and basically saying like, hey, let's see who calls plays better. Let's see which team has more success and going from there. Because I think that there's a ton of opportunity for fundraising in the spring game. But if you're closing everything, it doesn't give you that same opportunity. And again, it's easier to get, $5 from 50,000 people than it is to get 250,000 from one person, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe people wouldn't want to, pay for that or show up and see that. But I think that could be something that's worthwhile.
To reiterate, I really don't think it's that big of a deal. I get why people are upset, but on the football side of things, I've never really seen that the spring game is that important to, hone in on and try and take details away from anyway. Because when you're playing against your defense on your own team, there's kind of a point where everybody looks good. You're all on the same team, and I know you're competing against each other, but it's hard to distinguish what might actually work when you get into the season and who's going to stand out when that time comes. And I don't know, not to pile on here, but like Grayson McCall, for example, he looked solid in the spring game, did not look solid once the ball was snapped in the fall. So it's that type of thing. I've never really read too far into the spring game, but I certainly understand why people are upset. And it is a little bit of a missed opportunity, if done right, that NC State could capitalize in the NIL space and kind of launch, further outreach efforts into the fan base. So that kind of gets lost a little bit there. And I think the fan experience, it's tough these days in college football. Yeah. The way things are being a lot more professionalized, the value of being a college football fan, you kind of feel a little bit like a slap in the face, so to speak, the way that the money is really just taking everything over, and the tampering of these teams that have the money to go out and basically get whoever they want. It's ruining the sport to a certain degree. And so that's also a little bit of an aspect, I think, going on in this scenario in particular. But again, I really don't think it's that big of a deal, but it does take a little bit of steam off of the hype train. But maybe we don't need one of those here in 2025.
I 1,000% agree. And even to your point of, you can't really glean that much from it. That's where I'll disagree with you, because last year I saw some things where I was like, oh, that guy's a dude. He's a baller. And I also saw some things where I was like,
I knew where this was going.
That's an interesting bunch. So, you can learn a little something from the spring game. But again, I'm a little worried if that's a part of what Dave is trying to avoid. I don't think that's what Coach Dorn is trying to avoid. But if it is, that is a little bit worrisome for me.
Coming up next, we're going to get into some men's basketball talk. We do have a crossover episode coming out on Wednesday as well. NC State will be up in northern New York. They're playing the Syracuse Orange, and this feels like a must-win game if they do want to make the ACC tournament. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Last couple minutes of our Tuesday show. NC State men's basketball will be on the road Wednesday evening up in Syracuse, New York. It's a battle of the mid, and that might be being a little bit generous. 11-16 NC State, 11-16 Syracuse Orange. Syracuse is a game ahead of us in the ACC standings, and so that is where the intrigue lies. If NC State wants to get into the ACC tournament, how important is this game, Kenton? Is it an absolute must-win, or do you think they can still survive even if they don't get this one?
This is a must-win. This is one of those games where you're looking at it and saying, hey, if you lose this one, not only do you move back a game, Syracuse pushes up a game. Right. This is the moment. This is the moment where we've talked about the scenarios and who needs help and how the help would have to work in order for you to get where you want to go. This is one of those moments where it's like, dude, if you cannot get this one done, you know it's over. You know the season is cooked. There's nothing there. There is not even the opportunity for you to pull off some magic like you did last year because, again, you blew it. And I'll tell you, you've got to win one on the road because when you look at the rest of our schedule, you have to play on the road here. You have to play on the road at Miami. You have to play, I believe, is it on the road at Pitt? I know there's another one on the road as well.
No, I think Pitt is at home.
Okay, but you have to play multiple road games. This is one of 3 road games that's coming down the pipeline here in terms of finishing out this season. If you cannot figure out how to get a win on the road, you don't deserve to be in the ACC tournament and you won't be.
Yeah, to Kenton's point, 3 of the last 4 games in the regular season are on the road. At Syracuse, at Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh at home, and then to finish out, you're on the road at Miami. So if you're going to get into the ACC tournament, you're going to have to win some games on the road, and it's going to have to start Wednesday night up in Syracuse. Now, Syracuse is not a good team, and I know you've heard me say that a lot. Then NC State will still lose to them, and then people say, well, then what does that make NC State? I got it.
We are also not a good team.
Yes,
we are not
got it.
Pretending that we are.
That's been well established at this point in time, but something that you will hear Jackson Holzer say on the crossover episode, Syracuse does not play defense. So perhaps that is where NC State can find a way to squeak one out. I wouldn't say our defense is spectacular either, but there are times where it has excelled against certain teams this year. The intrigue, as it has been all year, will be for the offense. Paul McNeil came out of thin air and dropped 24, his new career high against Wake Forest on Saturday. Ultimately was the reason we were able to pick off Wake Forest. Quick sidebar, how funny is that? Wake Forest has a love affair with the NIT and the bubble. They always, every time, I don't want to turn this into a Wake Forest rant, but I hate Wake Forest. So every time those guys have a must-win game, they find a way to lose it. It was delicious handing them an L on Saturday, but I digress. You have to find a way to beat Syracuse on Wednesday. I truly believe, and I think we've probably already said this 3 or 4 times the last couple weeks anyway, if you lose this game on Wednesday night, it feels like a stake through the heart. It feels like a dagger, and I don't know if they will recover if they don't get this one.
Coach Keats, listen to me and listen to me well. I'm going to say this clear and I'm going to say it plain. You better play them young pups. You better play them.
We've only been asking since December.
Paul McNeil started off the year 3 of 14 from deep. 3 of 14. And then he had his first game in which he made multiple threes. Do you know what he has been shooting in terms of that?
It's something hot.
That man went from 3 of 14 before his first 3-point game to 10 of 19.
Ooh.
From 21% to 52.6%.
Ooh. Yeah.
Hey, buddy, let it fly. If it touches your hands, don't you see a shot that you don't like? Don't you see? What is all this swing it nonsense? Swing it to the rim, okay? Because you've been tickling the twine at a very high rate. Trey Parker, go out there and play with the Ville mentality, as they say. Go out there and do your thing. Cook it up how you cook it up. Because, again, at this point in the season, we have seen the same things get us the same results. Switch it up. Go with the young guys. Go do something great. Because, again, going with the same results, Grayson, how have our results gone on the road in the ACC so far? Have we won a single road game in the ACC so far this year?
We have not.
All righty. So switch it up. When you go out to the Carrier Dome, by the way, I don't give a damn what they call him the Carrier Dome now. His mama named him Carrier Dome. I'm going to call him Carrier Dome until the day I'm no longer on this earth. But when you go up to that Carrier Dome, you got to make it happen and make it happen. If the older guys can prove themselves to be something, if we get Brandon Huntley Hatfield of yesteryear, sure, great. But what we're seeing and what we believe to this team to be, let those young boys eat.
Even worse than not winning an ACC road game, we haven't won a road game, period. Not a single road game for the entirety of the season. If you would like things to change in your fortune, that's got to start on Wednesday. And yes, we have been talking about playing the young guys since December. Trey Parker and Paul McNeil have given you bursts that you have not gotten from the other players so far this season. If Paul McNeil started on Saturday, I don't see a world where he does not start on Wednesday evening. And if he doesn't start, there is something afoot.
We ride at dawn. Ride at dawn if he doesn't start.
And whether you differ on how important it is or isn't if you start this game, Paul McNeil needs more minutes. And that likely will mean he needs to start in this basketball game. If he gave you a career high on Saturday, he better be in the lineup at pretty much any at all times for the rest of this season. I'm not quite saying he should put up like Kobe Bryant volume in terms of shots, but I'm not saying he shouldn't at least get that Kobe Bryant Mamba mentality, because if he gets hot, he will continue to put him down. So NC State must-win game on Wednesday night, 7 p.m. in the Carrier Dome. To Kenton's point, well, they can call it whatever they want. It's the Carrier Dome. We are a 1.5-point underdog, which has also not fared well for us this year. It's time to buck the trend. Go up there, get some ice cream, and help secure your ticket to play in the ACC tournament in Charlotte. That will do it for us here on Tuesday. Again, apologies for playing a little bit of catch up this week, so bear with us. We're going to get back on track as we always do. We appreciate y'all sticking with us. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box. Tell us your thoughts on the women's win on Sunday over #1 Notre Dame. Outstanding. I cannot get over how awesome that was. Tell us your thoughts on the spring football game not being available to the public. Does that bother you? Are you upset about this? Let us know what you think about that. Men's basketball on the road against Syracuse on Wednesday evening. Must-win game. Mash that subscribe button. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Wednesday for more. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.